I hit record and watched the little red light blink on, that tiny dot that's seen me talk about shoes and trends and how to style a silk blouse 3 ways. This time, though, I'm not holding up a blazer or talking about hemlines. I'm sitting on my couch, hair slightly frizzy from the day, fingers wrapped around a mug I've barely sipped. "Hi," I say, and I see my own face soften on the screen. I'm Maureen. I'm 47. I've been married to my husband Greg for 15 years, and we have 2 freshmen in high school twins who eat like linebackers and never turn the lights off. I let myself smile for a second because that part of my life is still true and still good. I work for a fashion company, I go on. Greg owns his own plumbing business. We're stable, we're comfortable, we're those boring adults that younger people think don't have any drama left. I take a breath. And a few months ago, I walked in on my husband in our bedroom, dressed head to toe in women's clothes with full makeup and a wig, being intimate with another man who was dressed the same way. There it is, I can practically feel the collective lean in from anyone watching. The wildest part, I add, that wasn't the end of our marriage. It was the beginning of something I never saw coming, for him and for me. Greg has always been the more openly curious one between us when it comes to gender and sexuality. That probably sounds weird coming from the woman who works in fashion and spends half her day draping fabrics over bodies and talking about expression, but he was the one who, back in our 20s, could shrug and say, "Yeah, I had a crush on a guy friend in college," and then go right back to fixing a sink. The first time he dressed up as a woman for Halloween, tight little dress, cheap wig from the party store, fake lashes I glued on for him, he committed to it. He picked a name. He walked in those heels like he'd been practicing when I wasn't looking. Everyone at the party laughed and took pictures and said, "Wow, Greg, you make a pretty hot woman." And he played it off like a joke, but there was something in his eyes when we got home that stuck with me. Later, brushing his real hair out after I'd taken the wig off, he said very casually, "If I'd been born a girl, I think I would have had way more fun with clothes." We'd had a few of those conversations over the years, him wondering out loud where he fell on the spectrum, him admitting that he'd always liked softer fabrics more than he should. We'd had a night, about a year ago, after too much wine, where he'd leaned back on the couch and said, cheeks flushed, "You know, I'm pretty curious what it would be like to mess around with a guy or a trans woman, just once. I'd want to try things, hands on." I'd laughed it off at the time, half amused, half intrigued, thinking it was one of those late-night confessions that never make it into daylight. We even joked about a threesome, him and another person, me in the middle, all of us tangled up. It stayed in the realm of fantasy. Or so I thought, so let me take you to the day everything shifted. It was a Tuesday, the kind of gray, unremarkable afternoon you forget about until life drops a bomb on it. I'd left work early, sample shipment delays meant my meeting got canceled, and I had visions of a quiet house, a cup of tea, maybe catching up on emails and real pants instead of the heels I'd chosen that morning. The driveway was empty. When I pulled in, Greg's work van was never home before 5. The kids had after-school stuff. I grabbed my tote, hummed my way up the front steps, and unlocked the door. The house felt oddly warm. A faint, unfamiliar scent hung in the air, something floral and powdery, like the tester strip section of a department store. There was music drifting faintly from upstairs, something electronic and pulsy. I frowned. Maybe one of the kids had left a playlist going? Maybe Greg had come home early and forgotten the van in the shop? My brain scrambled for normal explanations. I kicked off my shoes in the hall, calling, "Hello?" No answer. Half of me already knew. There's this animal part of your body that recognizes when something's out of place, even before your mind catches up. My heart started to thump in my throat as I climbed the stairs. The bedroom door was mostly closed, light spilling out in a thin strip. I pushed it open. For a second, my brain refused to process what my eyes were seeing. It was like walking into a photograph from the wrong angle. There was Greg, yes, but not Greg the way I see him every morning in his work shirt and worn jeans. Greg in a fluffy pastel silk dress with puffed sleeves and a hem that hit mid-thigh, a cascade of curls from a blonde wig framing his face, lipstick smeared soft over his mouth, sheer stockings catching the light. And he was not alone. Another person, another man, though my mind took a moment to clock that through the makeup and the wig and the shimmering dress, was on the edge of our bed. His knees were parted, his hands buried in Greg's hair, his head tipped back in a way that made my stomach drop. Greg was kneeling between his legs, face level with his lap. In an unmistakable position, I didn't see everything, thank God. But I saw enough to know exactly what was happening, or had just happened a heartbeat before. I made a sound I've never heard myself make before, something between a cough and a scream, an audible, sharp gasp that sliced through the music. Both of them jerked like I'd thrown cold water. Greg spun around on his knees, eyes huge, lipstick smudged. The other man, Sam, though I didn't know his name yet, clutched at the skirt of his dress, pulling it down, face flushing under foundation. They scrambled, adjusting hemlines, tugging at wigs, trying to make themselves look less naked, even though technically they were covered. Maureen! Greg's voice cracked around my name. I can explain. I couldn't stay in that doorway another second. The room felt too small, the bed suddenly enormous and foreign. I backed out, walked downstairs on autopilot, my legs moving without my consent. In the kitchen, I pulled out a chair at the table and sat down, hands flat on the wood like I needed to anchor myself to something. I heard their footsteps upstairs, hurried and clumsy. Low murmurs, a door shutting. After what felt like an eternity but was probably only a minute, Greg appeared in the doorway, still in the dress and wig, stockings hugging his calves. The other person hovered behind him, a shadow in a pink dress, makeup beginning to crease. "Sit," I said, and my voice surprised me. It was calm and very, very cold. They sat opposite me, side by side. Greg's hands trembled in his lap. The other man, he looked to be about our age, maybe early 50s, with kind eyes under the eyeliner, kept darting glances between us, as if waiting to be yelled at. "Start talking," I said. "Now." Greg swallowed. "This is Sam," he began. "We met online, on a cross-dressing forum Reddit. We've been talking for a while." My vision tunneled for a second. How long is a while? "A few months," he admitted. Sam cleared his throat. We're both married," he said, voice soft but steady. "We both love our wives. This started as just messages sharing outfits, encouraging each other to try things on. We've both been closeted, I guess, since we were teenagers." He looked down at his lace-covered knees. "I've wanted to wear this kind of thing for as long as I can remember. Soft fabrics, feeling pretty, not having to be the man all the time. But where I grew up, that was not an option." Greg nodded, eyes on me. "Same," he said quietly. "You know, I've always been open to this stuff. But there were pieces I didn't know how to hand you without breaking everything. So I didn't. And then I found this subreddit, and there were all these guys talking about the exact same feelings I've had my whole life." There was genuine pain in his voice, and for a moment it pierced through my shock. "I work with clothes. I know what it feels like to put on a fabric that makes you sigh with relief, like you've come home to yourself. I tried to imagine being told that feeling was forbidden forever. Still, my heart was pounding against the cage of my ribs. "So you decided to—" "What?" I asked. "Meet up and have an affair in my bedroom?" Greg flinched. "It wasn't supposed to be like—" "But it was," I said, not loudly, but firmly. "Whatever else this is, whatever deeper story you have, I just walked in on my husband being intimate with someone who is not me. That part is not up for debate." Silence fell over the kitchen. The clock ticked too loudly. Somewhere down the block a dog barked. Sam shifted in his chair, the rustle of his silk skirt absurdly delicate in all that tension. "We never meant to hurt you," he said. "We were stupid. I was stupid. I'm married too. My wife has no idea. He gestured helplessly at his outfit. "I've been bottling this up for so long, the desire to feel like this, and the other desires that come with it." As they talked, haltingly at first, then with a strange, fragile honesty, I felt something unexpected happen inside me. I was still hurt. I was furious, actually. But as they took turns describing childhood memories of sneaking into closets, the thrill and shame of stolen fabrics against their skin, the way masculinity felt like armor they could never put down, I could feel gears shifting in my mind. These weren't two villains twirling mustaches. They were two middle-aged men in dresses and wigs, shaking, finally saying the quiet part out loud. I looked at Greg, really looked at him. The dress he was wearing was ridiculous and sweet, all fluff and sheen, like something meant for a doll. His shoulders filled it out awkwardly, but somehow the sight of him in it, eyes wide and frightened, made my chest ache. Here was my husband, the father of my kids, the guy who could rebuild a bathroom from the studs up, sitting in front of me in eyeliner, like a kid caught playing in his mother's closet. Somewhere under my anger, something else flickered. Curiosity, and, if I'm painfully honest, a thin electric line of desire I absolutely did not want to acknowledge yet. I took a slow breath, trying to choose my next words carefully. Then I turned to Sam. I'm not going to blow up your life today, I said. I'm not calling your wife, that's not my story to tell. But you should. She deserves to know who she's really married to, even if it's scary. Do something kind for her tonight and then start figuring out how to be honest. Sam's eyes filled so quickly it startled me. Thank you, he whispered. I will. I know I should. I nodded toward the door. Go home, I said gently. We'll be okay, or we'll at least figure out what okay looks like. He stood, unnervingly graceful in his heels, and murmured another apology before slipping out. That left Greg and me. The quiet between us felt different now, heavier and more intimate. I am so sorry, he began, but I held up a hand. Stand up, I said. He blinked, confused, but rose from his chair. The dress swayed around his thighs. Up close, I could see the tiny tremor in his hands, the way his chest rose and fell quickly. The lipstick was smeared just slightly at one corner of his mouth. My gaze caught on the outline of a bra under the silk, the way the fabric clung differently over his hips. Where I knew he was wearing panties, I should have only felt betrayal. Instead, my brain did this wild, treacherous thing. It flashed an image of him like this, but not with Sam, with me. Under me. Doing exactly what I asked without argument. The realization that I could ask anything right now. That he would probably do it, out of guilt, out of fear, out of his own desire, sent a sharp thrill through me. Get on your knees, I heard myself say. My voice was lower than usual. Right here, in front of me. He didn't even hesitate. He folded down onto the kitchen tile, the dress puffing around him, wig slipping a little. He looked up at me with those same brown eyes I've woken up to for 15 years, and I had never, in all that time, felt this particular combination of power and want. Beg me for my mercy, I said softly. For my forgiveness. His throat worked. Maureen, he said, voice rough. Please, I know I've hurt you. I was selfish and cowardly, and I'm so sorry. Please don't leave me. Please, tell me what to do to make this right. I'll do anything. The words should have been pathetic. Instead, they landed somewhere low in my belly like a spark. I realized with a sudden clarity that I wasn't just angry. I was turned on by his vulnerability, by the sight of my very solid, very capable husband kneeling in a ridiculous dress, by the knowledge that he was both ashamed and desperate, and somewhere under all that, still himself. It was like discovering a switch inside myself I didn't know I had. I didn't map out a master plan right then. This wasn't some carefully crafted revenge fantasy. It was instinct and adrenaline, and a lifetime of being the reasonable one, tilting on its axis. Get up, I said after a moment. We're not done talking, but I need you to hear this clearly. I am hurt. I am furious. And I am also not as turned off by what I walked in on as you probably think. He blinked. You're not? I don't like the lying, I said. I don't like that you went behind my back. But the cross-dressing, the curiosity, the wanting another man? I shrugged, feeling a little dizzy with honesty. You told me versions of that years ago. I just didn't realize how deeply it ran. And watching you obey me like that, I exhaled. I'm going to need to sit with all of this, but part of me liked it. Over the next days and weeks, we talked more than we had in years. There were tears and raised voices and slammed doors. There were also long, quiet conversations about identity and shame and fantasy. He showed me the Reddit threads, the community that had made him feel less alone. I asked about the first time he put on a pair of panties. He asked about the first time I realized I liked being in charge more than I let myself admit. Somewhere in those conversations, an idea began to take shape. A wild, ethically complicated idea, sure, but one that made a part of me sit up and say, yes, that. I told him, one night after the kids were asleep and we were sitting on opposite ends of the couch like wary strangers, if you're going to explore this part of yourself, I want to be in the room, literally. I don't want secrets, I don't want sneaking. If Sam is in your life, he's in mine too. And if there's going to be intimacy, I call the shots. He stared at me, breathing shallowly. You wanna watch? I want to direct, I corrected. If we do this, if I decide I'm okay with it, you and Sam don't touch each other unless I say how and when. You dress when I tell you to dress. You do what I say. And when it's over, you take off the wig and you remember you're my husband and the father of my children. Understood? The look that crossed his face then, a mix of relief, fear, and something very much like arousal, told me everything I needed to know about whether this arrangement would appeal to him. Understood, he said hoarsely. So yes, We invited Sam back, not right away, and not without rules. We laid them out like a contract. Honesty between Greg and me, check-ins before and after. No secrets about dates and times, no violating consent, ever. Sam, for his part, agreed immediately, almost gratefully. He confided that the chance to be seen and directed by a woman felt like a gift he never thought he'd receive. The first time we did girls' night together, I laughed so hard I cried. Not because it was ridiculous, though visually we were a sight. Me in one of my favorite silk dresses and sheer pantyhose, hair curled, lipstick on. Greg and Sam perched on the edge of the bed in matching stockings, their dresses spread over their knees. Both of them looking like they'd fall over if I breathed on them. I laughed because I felt powerful. For the first time in a long time, I wasn't the one scrambling to adapt to everyone else's needs. I was the one giving instructions. Sit there, cross your legs. Look at him like you're about to steal his heart. And they did. They followed every little command, grateful and eager and shy. I won't go into explicit details, that's not what this video is for, but I will say this, watching them explore tenderness and attraction with my permission, under my eye, did something to me. I discovered I liked being the director, the queen on the chessboard moving the pieces. I liked the way Greg glanced over at me every few minutes, as if to make sure he still had my blessing. I liked the way I could stop everything with a single word, and they would immediately obey. And later, when Sam went home and the makeup came off and the wigs went back on their stands, I liked the way Greg would turn all that nervous, devoted energy toward me. We started having our own private girls' nights without Sam, just the two of us, dressing up, me doing his makeup, him standing perfectly still while I fixed his wig. There's something incredibly intimate about putting eyeliner on a man who trusts you not to poke him in the eye. Those nights, he would focus entirely on my pleasure, taking his time, listening to every little sound I made, not asking for anything in return unless I offered. The power dynamic was reversed from the script we'd unconsciously been following all these years, and it lit me up from the inside. I felt like a new version of myself, more dominant, more unapologetic, more in tune with what I actually wanted instead of what I thought a wife was supposed to want. Do I still feel guilty about Sam's wife? Yes, part of me hates that she's living in the dark about such a huge piece of her husband's life. I've nudged him gently and not so gently to tell her. I even half-joked the other night, glass of wine in hand, eyeliner still smudged from our earlier session, that maybe she'd surprise him. Maybe she'd want in on the fun lady night, plural. He laughed, but his eyes were wet. I'm working up to it, he said. I don't want to lose her. I get that. I don't know exactly what the right path is here. I know we're walking a tightrope between honesty and fear, between traditional monogamy and something, else I know a therapist would probably have a field day with us. We might end up there. I'm not ruling it out. What I do know is that my marriage is not the same as it was before I opened that bedroom door. In some ways, it's more precarious. Trust, once cracked, doesn't magically glue itself back together. But in other ways, we're more honest with each other than we've ever been. There are no more vague jokes about curiosity. There are only real conversations, real boundaries, real experiments in who we are and who we're becoming. So if you're watching this and thinking, I could never, that's okay. I'm not holding our situation up as a model. I'm not saying everyone should invite third parties into their marriage or direct their husband's secret desires like a film set. What I am saying is this. The parts of ourselves we bury have a way of digging themselves out one way or another. Sometimes they explode everything. Sometimes, if you're very lucky and very brave and talk more than you run, they carve out a weird, beautiful new path you couldn't have imagined. From the old one, I was horrified the day I walked in on Greg and Sam in their dresses and wigs on our bed. I still flinch when I remember that first frozen second, but I'm also grateful, because that moment forced us to stop pretending. It cracked open a door into parts of my husband and myself that we might have never explored otherwise. And as strange as it still feels to say this out loud, into a camera on a Tuesday night, I kind of like who I am on the other side.